Isang magandang araw po sa bawat isa sa inyo. Last Sunday po during our live streaming, nagkaroon po ng power interruption. Kaya po naputol po ang ating service. Ipaumanhin po ninyo, we apologize po na naputol po ang service. Anyway, we decided po na i-record itong message para po sa inyo na sumusubaybay sa amin online. And we also decided na mula simula na lang po ang recording na ito para po yung iba sa inyo na hindi ho nasimulan o maaring hindi nyo napanood yung umpisa po ay mapapanood nyo po ng buo ang ating pong mensahe. Anyway po, welcome to Bread of Life, GenSan Ministry. Ito po ay ating pong ginagawa kada linggo na kahit po na nakasimula po kami ng in-house service, kung kayo man po hindi maka-attend ay pinagpapatuloy po natin, meron tayong live streaming at pwede po ninyong mabalikan ang ating mensahe sa ating pong Facebook at saka YouTube accounts. Anyway, tayo po kasi ay magtatapos na ng ating pag-aaral po ng message na entitled po ay Managing Your Ego. Again, kinuha po natin ito sa libro po ni Ryan Holiday entitled, ang title po ay Ego is the Enemy. Sa ating pong pag-aaral, sa pagtatapos po nito, tayo po ay nasa ikatlong bahagi ng message na to na una nga pong part 1 is Aspire, part 2 po is Success, at part 3 po ay Failure. And we've been looking at the theme po nitong ng portion po na to na being resilient po in our failures. So, sa mga pagkakamali, pagkabaksak sa buhay, nakakabawi po tayo. Yung resilience, makabalik po tayo. Simulan po natin ang mensahe para orinin po natin ang isang video sa buhay po ni Jackie Chan. The past Sundays po na talakay po na nakita natin ang buhay po na istorya po kahit papano through video, si J.K. Rowling, ang ating pong author po ng Harry Potter series. And the other Sunday, napanood po natin ang storya ni Mr. Bean. Nakita po natin na sa kanilang storya po ay may mga failures along the way. So ngayon po panoorin po natin si Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan was born in Hong Kong in a very poor family. His father worked as a cook and his mother as a housekeeper for the French ambassador. Jackie Chan grew up to be a very energetic kid, but because of his dyslexia, he had troubles learning in school, so he ended up being the worst student. And when he was only 7 years old, his parents moved to Australia for work and decided that Jackie Chan should stay in Hong Kong in a very strict boarding school where he would learn acrobatics, martial arts, singing and dancing. So for the next 10 years, he trained all day long, and some days he trained for 19 hours. He said that the process of mastering martial arts was very painful, and because the boarding school was very strict, if some mistakes were made, harsh punishments followed. And as things weren't hard enough, he was also bullied by the other kids. He was terrified to stand up for himself. Until one incident happened. I was bullied quite a lot when I was growing up in my Peking opera school. I allowed myself to be bullied because I was scared and didn't know how to defend myself. I was bullied until I prevented a new student from being bullied. By standing up for him, I learned to stand up for myself. He couldn't drop out of the school because he had nowhere else to go. His parents were in Australia, and years later, he learned that his father had been a spy, so that's why they had to move. His father was hiding in the American embassy. At 17, Jackie Chan started working as a stuntman and a movie extra in many films. He was quickly becoming known for his lack of fear and dangerous stunts. And he was terrified before every stunt, but he saw it as a chance to stand out. He was even working as a stuntman to Bruce Lee. But unfortunately, he didn't have success as an actor. So defeated, he moved to Australia with his parents and started working in construction. When he was 21, he returned in Hong Kong determined to succeed. But his kung fu movies, again, were complete failures. And finally, he decided that he didn't want to become the next Bruce Lee. He wanted to become the first Jackie Chan, do something new and forge his own path. So with the perfect combination of comedy and his own style of martial arts, the audience loved the new genre he created, and he became a huge star in Asia. And after many years of hard work, broken bones, and determination, finally he became famous and successful in Hollywood at the age of 42. And even though he never fully learned how to read or write or use a computer, Jackie Chan has made more than 100 movies, speaks 7 languages, holds the Guinness World Record for most stunts by a living actor. And after 56 years in the film industry, he won an Oscar for Lifetime Achievement. So what can we learn from the motivational success story of Jackie Chan? When failures and hardships knocked him on the ground, every time he came back even stronger and more determined to succeed. And do you know how he was able to do that? He was never afraid to break his own limits. Don't be a prisoner of your own mind. Stop overthinking everything. Stop wishing and start doing. We don't know how many tomorrows we have. So break from the cage of self-doubt and be free. And remember, the only limits that exist are the ones in your own mind. So, what's your story?
Ang ganda rin po ng istorya ni Jackie Chan, no? Kung kayo po ay nanonood ng mga palabas ni Jackie Chan, ano po ang inyong inaabangan? No? Malamang kung kayo, kagaya ko po kayo, ay inaabangan nyo po yung ending. Hindi lang siyempre maganda yung mga action na ginawa niya, may mga nakakatawang senaryo naman talaga ang ginagawa ni Jackie Chan. Pero po ang ending na tinitignan natin o hinaabangan natin, tinatawag po ng mga bloopers. Kaya you will notice na parang pag pinalabas ang isang pelikula, parang ang ganda, ayos. Pero marami pong bloopers. At nakita ho natin sa pagka pinapanood nyo po mga palabas ni Jackie Chan, yung mga bloopers po niya, hindi ho biro yung iba. Iba talaga, may sugat siya. O iba parang nabalian siya. Yung mga iba na muntik siyang mamatay. Kasi nga, siya ang nag-i-stunt talaga, no? So, talagang ginagawa niya. So, ganun po ka-dedicated itong si Jackie Chan. Pero sa ating po napanood, nakita naman natin na grabe rin pinagdaanan niya. Yung kumbaga, difficulty along the way. Nung bata siya, nabubuli siya. Nung una, na parang gusto niya maging parang Bruce Lee. Pero until na ma-realize niya, hindi dapat niya gayahin, kundi kung ano siya. And so, yung nga, kumbaga, to make the long story short, history, kumbaga, is, alam naman ho natin, tanyag na tanyag po itong si Jackie Chan. Sabi nga po, Jackie Chan has made more than 100 movies. He would speak 7 languages, holds the Guinness World Record for most stunts by a living actor, and after 56 years sa film industry, nanalo siya ng Oscar for Lifetime Achievement. Hindi ho siya nanalo ng talagang being a best actor. Siguro dahil sa contribution na ginawa niya, binigyan po siya ng parangal ng Oscars. Anyway, achiever po siya. Ang tanong nga daw po, what can we learn from the motivational success story of Jackie Chan? Ang sagot po nung gumawa niyan, when failures and hardships knock him on the ground, every time he came back even stronger and more determined to succeed. Kaya nga, mga bloopers yung mga pagkakamali, ulit lang, sige lang, ulit, no? Nakakatawa ibang bloopers niya, pero ibang bloopers niya talagang mahirap, masakit. Marami mga failures along the way. And do you know how he was able to do that? Because he was never afraid to break his own limits. That's why, sabi nung sumulat o nung video na yon, don't be a prisoner of your own mind. Stop overthinking everything. Stop wishing and start doing. Basta simula mo lang, sige lang, nagkamali ka na, okay yun. Bawiin. Galingan mo pa compared doon sa iyong pagkakamali. Kaya sabi, remember the only limits that exist are the ones in your own mind. Kaya po, along the way sa ating pag-aaral nitong portion ng failures, nakita po natin tatlo so far na principles. Number one, nakita natin a lifetime or dead time scenario. Hinambing po ni Ryan, pinag-iba po, no? yung a lifetime, yung mga marami tayo na aksayang oras dead time. No? Kaya kinakailangan samantalahin natin, take the most of the opportunity na sa atin sa araw-araw. No? Hindi ibig sabihin ng a lifetime, yung bang naghihintay na lang tayo na wala tayong ginagawa. Hindi, may ginagawa. No? Second, nakita ho natin humiliating moments. Sa panahon ng mga failures, minsan nakakaya, minsan big. Kumbaga humiliations, hindi ho yung mga maliliit na mga embarrassments lang, kundi minsan ang lalaki po, ang bibigat. No, ibig sabihin, pwede pa rin tayo makabawi in spite of all those humiliating moments in our lives. And thirdly, nakita natin sa struggles natin sa buhay, minsan may mga taong ayaw sa atin. Ang response natin, always love. And so let's look at the fourth principle ni Ryan Holiday po. Hindi ko lahat na tinalakay. Nag-skip na po ko doon sa ibang mga principles. I'd like to share with you this principle. Ang tawag ko ni Ryan Holiday to, pagkasulat niya, draw the line or draw a standard. Para along the way, nung binabasa ko po ito at pinag-aaralan, baka mas magandang gamitin po yung title ko na lang yung principle na to as abandoning principles. Parang negative, and abandon mong principles. So, yan ang isa sa mga resulta ng pagkakamali sa buhay, bakit inabandon ang principles. Marcus Aurelius, alam po natin, the Roman Emperor, sinulat niya, it can ruin your life only if it ruins your character. Talaga ang bagay na nakakasira sa ating buhay, hindi lang yung mga physical na mga pagkakamali o mga nangyari sa ating buhay, kundi ang talaga nakakaruwi, nakakasira talaga na matindi sa atin kapag ka nasira ang ating karakter. Ang hirap po kasang bawiin hindi ho ako nandito na sinasabi ang failure na hindi na tayo pwede makabawi. Kaya nga binabalik-balik po natin na pwede tayo makaahon, pwede tayo makabawi, makabangon mula doon sa kahit anong bang pagkabaksak natin. Hanggang buhay po tayo. O baga meron tayong pag-asa. Ito, ang problema lang ho, kaya lang ho, yung iba naging failure sa kanilang buhay kasi po inabandon nila ang mga tamang prinsipyo sa buhay. And so, ito pong in example ni Ryan Holiday, si John DeLorean. Natalakay po natin siya sa isang pag-aaral po natin on success. Part 2 yan, success, which is portion po doon yung managing yourself. Nakita ho natin doon na malaking pagkakamali ni John DeLorean kasi hindi niya una na-manage ang sarili niya. Kaya nga, character ang problema So, let me read, John DeLorean ran his car company into the ground. Kumbaga, sumadsad. Nasira yung kumpanya with a mix of outsized ambition, negligence, narcissism, self greed, and mismanagement. As the bad news began to pile up and the picture was made clear and public, how do you think he responded? Lumalabas ng totoo yung mga pagkakamali niya publicly na, hindi lang privately within the company. Anong ang response niya? Was it with resigned acceptance? Tinanggap ba niya? Inamin niya ba pagkakamali? Did he acknowledge the errors his disgruntled employees were speaking out about for the first time? Was he able to reflect even slightly on the mistakes and decisions that had brought him, his investors, and his employees so much trouble? Ayun po yung mga questions ni Ryan Holiday. Ano pong sagot doon sa ginawa ni John DeLorean? Of course not. Instead, he put in motion a series of events that would end in a $60 million drug deal and his subsequent arrest. That's right. After his company began to fail, failure almost exclusively tied to his unprofessional management style, he figured the best way to save it all would be to secure financing through an illegal shipment of 220 pounds of cocaine. No, kaya po yun pag inabandon ng principle, yung mga failure sa buhay, lalong paggrabe ng paggrabe, pasama ng pasama ang buhay, pasama ng pasama ang nangyayari sa tao, lalong dumidilim ang buhay. Imbis na lumabas sa liwanag para magpatuloy sa liwanag, kundi lalong sa kadiliman. O, kaya lalong masama. Okay, yun ang nangyari kay John DeLorean. Sure, after his publicized and very embarrassing arrest, DeLorean was eventually acquitted on the charges on the rather implausible argument of entrapment. Anyway, nakalaya dun sa word na entrapment. Legally, magaling guro mga lawyer niya. Nakalaya din siya dun sa legal aspect na, in a sense, na technical aspect ng entrapment. Except he is on video holding up a baggie of cocaine, saying with giddy excitement, this stuff is good as gold. No? In spite na merong video siya gano'n, anyway, hindi siya nakulong. Or sandali lang siya nakulong. There's no question about who caused John DeLorean's disintegration. There's also no question about who made it so much worse. The answer is him. Si John mismo ang problema. He found himself in a hole and kept digging until he made it all the way to hell. Kumbaga, nahulog siya sa hukay at lalo niya pinalalim yung hukay. Kumbaga, if only he had stopped, if at any point he'd said, is this the person I want to be? Kung sinabi lang niya sana yun, baka sakaling merong paraan na nakaaw siya. Kasi meron namang gustong tumulong sana sa kanya. Kaya lang, itong napakaganda po na tinuturo ng Biblia, ng Scripture, sinasabi ng Scripture sa Proverbs 11:23. Sa Message Translation, ganito pa pagkasabi, the integrity of the honest keeps them on track. The deviousness of crooks brings them to ruin. No? Yung pagka demonyo, kumbaga ng isang masamatang crook na nga devilish pa o devious, masyadong masama po. Kaya lalo ruin. Kaya again, principle. Kaya again, virtues ang problema Yung character ang problema ni John DeLorean. It's not yung hindi niya alam kung anong pwedeng gawin. Kaya lang, dahil nga, mali na yung kalooban, kaya mali ang mga nagiging desisyon sa buhay. The New Century Version rendered that scripture, good people will be guided by honesty. This honesty will destroy those who are not trustworthy. No? Hindi siya kapanipaniwala na, hindi siya mapagkatiwalaan na, dishonest pa siya, ay di lalo siya nasira. Completely destroyed. Sayang, magaling sana. Sayang, sinasabi po, maganda sana yung plano niya na isang yung futuristic, kumbaga na car Kaya lang hindi ko siya nagabayan. Bakit? Because of abandoning principles. Everett McKinley, Dirksen, American politician, parang ang sinasabi niya about principles, ito po, I am a man of fixed and unbending principles, the first of which is to be flexible at all times. No, kung pag-isipan mo natin mabuti yon, nakakatawa, nakakainis. Para bang hindi ho lahat ng politician ganyan, of course. Yung bang ako, a man of principle, pero ang principle ko, flexible ako, na pwede akong makapag-compromise, yung bang kung saan makakabuti para sa kanyang political career. Marami ho ganyan di ho ba? Anyway, kaya yun makikita natin, again, abandoning principles. Sometimes ang problema lang sa society kasi, siyempre minsan nananalo pa rin may mga ganyan tao. Na nakakapanungkulan pa rin sila. No, kaya hindi ho talaga fair ang labanan sa mundo Hindi ho talaga tayo magiging fair dito. Hindi ho talaga magkakaroon ng sufficient o tamang justice po talaga. But anyway, yun po no? Ang ano naman yan, in the long run sa kaduluhan, yes, panalo ka seemingly, quote unquote. Panalong marami mga tao dahil sa maling kaparaan ang ginagawa nila. Pero panandalian lang yan. Dahil itong sabi ng Proverbs 16:25, there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Sige, pwede kang panalo sa buhay sa kasalukuyan. sa maling kaparaanan. Seemingly, sa tingin ng iba, successful sila. Pero sa kaduluhan, kamatayan. Sa kaduluhan, although lahat namatay, mamamatay. Pero yung kamatayan, no, yung kamatayan na pangit ba na buhay later on? Oh, yung bang kasamaan minsan ang magiging resulta. Meron pong video clip na maganda po. Isang bata po, I think 2-3 years old po, kinausap po niya nanay niya. Sabi niya, "Mom, can I eat this apple?" "No, it's an onion." "Onion yan," sabi ng nanay. "It's an apple." "It's an onion." So, nagtatalo sila. Oh, sabi ng nanay, "Okay, if you insist na onion niya, na apple yan, then eat it." So, kinain po ng bata. At panoorin po natin ang reaction ng bata habang kinakain po niya yung onion, yung sibuyas. Let's watch. Nakakatawa po yung itsura ng bata. Natatawa kayo sigurado nung pinapanood po nyo yan. Pero you will notice, ang caption po na sinulat po nung nagpalabas po ng video, nakalagay, "He'd rather die than admit the mistake." Di ba? Totoo eh. Oh? Para sa isang bata. Weird nga, bata pa eh. Bata pa, tuso na. Kumbaga, may kalokohan na itong bata na to? Mabagay, totoo naman eh. Yun naman sinful nature eh. Di ba parang gano'n naman tayo eh. Lumaki na lang tayo eh. Lumaki na lang ang kinakain natin. Pero gano'n, di ba? We would rather die rather than admit our mistake. Di ba kahiyaan eh. Kung aaminin ko yung kasalanan ko, nakakahiya eh. Di ba, sige na lang, patunay ko lang, tiisin ko na lang. Di ba, minsan weird ang buhay, minsan weird ang utak ng tao. To that extent, pwedeng gawin kagaya ng bata. Sige lang, kunwari, pero ang nun, tapang nun, diretso mo kakainin. Iba nga sa atin, hindi natin makakain siguro yun. Pero bata, sige lang, kahiyaan na to eh. Sabi ko kasi apple eh, ayaw niya mapahiya sa nanay niya. Totoo lang, napahiya rin siya kahit hindi sa tingin niya, hindi dapat siya mapapahiya. Di ba ganun din tayo sa ating buhay? No? I just don't know. Iba-iba lang ho tayo onions na kinain. Iba-iba lang ho sibuyas ang ating kinain sa buhay. Pero minsan ganun din ho tayo. We are unwilling to admit our mistakes. Why? Ego is the enemy. Self is the problem. Ang ganda po ng pagkasabi rin ni Franklin Delano Roosevelt we may make mistakes. Totoo naman eh. Magkakamali tayo eh. But they must never be mistakes which result from faintness of heart or abandonment of moral principle. Okay lang na magkamali eh. Pero hindi dahil sa faintness yung kahinaan ng puso, at saka most especially abandonment of moral principle. Dahil inabandon natin yung mga virtues, mga tamang virtues, tamang values sa buhay, kaya tayo nagkamali-mali sa buhay. Ang problema ko ng tao, pag ayaw niyang aminin yung pagkakamali, lalo ko siya nagkakamali. Dagdag ng dagdag yung pagkakamali. Ryan Holiday continued, "People make mistakes all the time. They start companies they think they can manage. They have grand and bold visions that were a little too grandiose. This is all perfectly fine." Okay naman yun eh. Okay naman ho na meron tayong aspirations. So, may tinuturo naman natin yung aspirations na yun sa buhay. It's what being an entrepreneur or a creative or even a business executive is about. We take risk. We mess up. That's normal part of the cycle of life. Sumubok ka eh. O, di mess up. Pero okay lang. O, okay lang magkamali. No? Huwag lang yung nagkamali tayo dahil inabandon na natin ang tamang mga prinsipyo sa buhay eh. That's why itong ganda-ganda po ng pagkasulat ni Ryan dito, which I'd like to show you. Ryan Holiday said, or wrote, "The problem is that when we get our identity tied up in our work, we worry that any kind of failure will then say something bad about us as a person." Kasi po masyado nating hinawakan yung trabaho na parang andyan, nakasentrong ating buhay dyan, natatakot tayong mawala yung trabaho. Siyempre, hindi naman masarap mawala ng trabaho, masira sa trabaho. Kaya lang, nandoon na ang ating identity, kaya natatakot tayong may masabing masama sa atin. It's a fear of taking responsibility, of admitting that we might have messed up. Yun si John DeLorean eh. Unwilling to admit. Ayaw i-take yung responsibility na mali yung mga desisyon na ginawa niya. May mga kapalpak ang ginawa niya. Di ba? Parang yung batang kumain ng onion. We mess up. We don't wanna admit. It's the sunk cost fallacy. And so we throw good money and good life after bad and end up making everything so much worse. Isn't that right? Correct na correct po. Sumasama po eh. There's a way which seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Worst. Let's say, sulat ni Ryan, the walls feel like they're closing in. It might feel as if you have been betrayed or your life's work is being stolen. These are not rational good emotions that will lead to rational good emotions because ego, ang tanong ng ego, ganito eh, why is this happening to me? Excuse me, why do I save this and prove to everyone I'm as great as they think? No? It's the animal fear of even the slightest sign of weakness. No? Kita ho natin yan sa mga tao eh. Ang tanong na, bakit ito nangyari sa akin? Paano ko ililigtas ang sarili ko dito sa kahihiyan? No? Ganun po minsan eh, ang tao eh. No? Nakita ho natin sa iba tao, minsan nagawa na natin yan, fighting desperately for something we're only making it worse. Kaya it's not the path to great things eh. The scripture again has a word for that. In Proverbs 16 verses 17 to 19, the highway, the path of the upright avoids evil. Those who guard their ways preserve their lives. Yung pangalagaan natin yung mga tamang prinsipyo sa buhay, mapapangalagaan tayo sa ating buhay. But pride goes before destruction. Verse 18, a haughty spirit before a fall. Kaya po bumabagsak ang tao dahil again, the self, the pride, the lack of humility. Kaya sabi ng verse 19, better to be lowly in spirit, sa kababaan ng puso, along with the oppressed, than to share plunder with the proud. I guess that's John DeLorean. Kaya ang storya niya, di ba? Ang mga kinasama niya, yung mga nakinabang, yung mga taong walang pakialam talaga sa kumpanya at makasarili. Yun, plundering. They plundered the company. Dwight Eisenhower, during his inauguration on January 20, 1953, said, look at this, a people that values its privileges above its principles soon loses both. I guess it's a sort of a parang prophetic eh. The West, no, galing sa kahirapan na nakaangat, o hindi lang naman para sa West, even the East, no? Easterners tayo rin, mga Easterners, pwede ho tayong magkamali na ang ating ay nahangad sa buhay mga privileges. Yung mga natalakay natin, di ba, yung mga perks, mga entitlement, no? above principles, kaya parehong nawawala. Yung privileges at saka yung principle, parehong nawala. Kasi pinahalagahan ang mga privileges above principles. Meron pa po mga example itong si Ryan Holiday. At magugulat po tayo. Magaling naman itong tao na to. Kaya lang po, pinakita ni Ryan Holiday the other side of this guy named Steve Jobs. He was 100% responsible for his firing from Apple. Kung kayo po ay alam ang istorya, alam naman na tatanggal siya sa Apple. Siya ang nagpasimula, natanggal po siya. Imagine the pain. Ikaw nagsimula, ikaw tinanggal. Due his later success, Apple's decision to fire him seems like an example of poor leadership. Di ba? Marami bakit tinanggal nila si Steve Jobs? Siya pa naman na nagsimula, kawawa naman. But he was at that time, sulat ni Ryan Holiday, unmanageable. His ego was unequivocally out of control. Di na siya makontrol, unmanageable na siya. Siguro pride entered in dahil ako nagsimula, ako nakaisip nito, akong visionary dito No? If you were John Sculley and CEO of Apple, you have fired that version of Steve Jobs too and been right to do so. No? Yun ang other side ng kay Steve Jobs. Magaling siya, pero natanggal siya, yung pala dahil sa sarili niya rin kagagawan. May bahagi rin siya doon. Hindi lahat para bang para in-overtake lang siya, para matanggal lang siya. Now, Steve Jobs' response to his firing was understandable. He cried, he fought. When he lost, he sold all but a single share of his stock in Apple and swore never to think of the place again. No? Yung bang nagsalita ng mga, hindi na ako babalik dyan. Di ba? Parang ganun tayo, di ba? Tayo'y nasaktan, di ba? Ayoko na, hindi nyo na ako makikita dyan. But then he started a new company and threw his whole into it. He tried to learn as best he could from the mismanagement or mistakes at the root of his first failure. He started another company after that too and called Pixar. Alam natin, kumita ang Pixar, magaling sa movies, kumbaga. Steve Jobs, the famous egomaniac who parked in handicapped parking spaces just because he could, responded in this critical moment in a surprising way. Yun naman pala Kaya naman pala, sumabit temporarily itong si Steve Jobs kasi unmanageable. Yun nung entitlement Handicapped parking space yan. Hindi. Ako visionary Wala akong pakialam sa handicap. Di ba? Ganun mga tao Yung privileges na over principle. Kaya, will ruin us. Buti na lang magandang response niya. Na humble siya. Humble for CEOs convinced their genius anyway. He worked until he'd not only proven himself again, but significantly resolved the flaws that had caused his downfall to begin with. Inayos niya yung pagkakamali niya. Na-abandon for a while ang principle pero nakabawi. Yun ang gusto ko pong aralin natin Inaaral natin, yes, failure because of abandoning principles. Pero ito yung failure na pwede kang makabawi. Pagpalagay na natin, nagkamali talaga tayo. We fail big. We fail by abandoning principles. But just the same, we can come back. Kaya lang, paalala lang talaga ng scripture, Proverbs 18 verse 12, before his downfall, a man's heart is proud, but humility comes before honor. Kaya po, nakabawi naman si Steve Jobs. Marami pa rin siya nagawa up to the end of his life. Kaya lang, yun lang, bumagsak. Why? Because of ego. Because of pride. Albert Einstein, you know him, he said, "Try not to become a man of success, but a man of value. Look around at how people want to get more out of life than they put in. A man of value will give more than he receives. Be creative, but make sure that you will that what you create is not a curse for mankind. No? Hindi lang tayo be a person of success. Hindi masamang umasenso sa buhay. Gusto natin umasenso. Gusto po kayong paasensohin sa inyo. Gusto ko po makita natin ang daanang lakbayin ng tagumpay sa buhay. Gusto ko ng Diyos na maging panalo tayo sa buhay. Kaya lang, not at the expense of value. Kagaya sabi ng nasisabi ni Albert Einstein, no, hindi yung ano ba makukuha ko dyan, kundi ano maidadagdag ko sa buhay, ano bang pwede ko maitulong. Hindi yung pagsasabantalahan ko yan. Yun, by giving more instead of receiving. Minsan po, tao kaya po, minsan successful sila, pero nasa receiving end sila eh. Huh? Yun po, isang stage lang naman ng buhay yun eh. Yung umasenso ka, sa receiving end ka, para kang bata, receiving end eh. Pero kailangan we go beyond. Mag-mature tayo into another aspect na nagbibigay. No? May malasakit sa tao. No? And so, ito pong pagkasulat ni Ryan, it's not often that successful or powerful people are able to do this. Yung ginawa po ni Steve Jobs na bumangon. Not when they experience heart-rending failure. So, another example po binigay ni Ryan. American Apparel's founder Dov Charney is an example. After losses of some $300 million and numerous scandals, the company offered him a choice. Step aside as CEO and guide the company as a creative consultant for a large salary or be fired. Mamili siya. Kasi nga nagkakaproblema na, hindi na maganda yung pagpapalakad, and so nagkakamali na. Hindi naman siya tanggalin, ino-operan pa nga siya, malaki pa rin ang kita sana. Kaya lang, he rejected both options and picked something much worse, sulat ni Ryan. After filing a lawsuit in protest, he gambled his entire ownership in the company to initiate a hostile takeover with a hedge fund. Ang hedge fund po, ibig sabihin, it's a contract entered into or asset held as a protection against possible financial loss. So, kumbaga, siniguro niya yung pera niya. Kaya lang, he insisted that his conduct be investigated and judged. It was, and he was not vindicated. Napatunay talagang mali. His personal life was splashed across the headlines and embarrassing, kumbaga, details revealed. The lawyer, etong weird na portion dito sa buhay nito si Dov Charney na to. The lawyer he chose to represent him in his lawsuits happened to be the same one who had already sued him close to half a dozen times for sexual harassment and financial irregularities. Yung lawyer na yun nag-accuse, kumbaga naging lawyer na nag-accuse sa kanya ng mali niyang ginagawa, yun ang kinuha niya. Siguro para nakita niya, baka magaling ito, na booking nila ako eh. Yun ang kinuha niya. So anyway, in the past, Charney had accused this man of shaking him down and making bogus legal claims. Now they were working together. No, minsan weird ang tao. Kaya nga, the destiny of a man, of a wicked man, becomes worse eh. Pasama ng pasama ang magiging lakbayin eh. No, the sad part is this portion dito sa American Apparel. Itong company to, American Apparel spent more than $10 million. It didn't have to fight him off, no? It didn't have. Yung wala naman silang $10 million, kaya lang parang sayang ba yung pera? A judge issued the restraining order. Sales slumped. Finally, the company began laying off factory workers and long-time employees, the exact people Charney claimed to be fighting for, just to stay afloat. A year later, they were bankrupt and he was out of money too. Weird eh. Yung kiniklaim ni Dov na kaya niya nilalaban ito para sa mga empleyado. Kaso dahil nga lalong nasira yung kumpanya, nawalan tuloy ng trabaho yung mga taong supposed to be pinaglalaban niya. Grabe, yun ang masama sa buhay. Minsan yung kasiraan na ginagawa natin, hindi lang naman tayo nasisira. Nadadamay pamilya natin, unang-una. Nadadamay yung ibang mga tao na wala namang kinalaman sa ating mga kalukuhan, pati sila nasira. Which is what happened to American Apparel. Sayang, kawawa na may mga employees during that time. Proverbs 14 verse 16 says, "A wise person is cautious and turns away from evil, but the fool is arrogant and careless." He's a fool not because he doesn't have knowledge. He's a fool because he follows the path of wickedness. Arrogante, careless tuloy siya. Kaya nga mali-mali na ang ginawa eh. No? Hindi na niya malaman talaga ang tama. Sigurado nakakalimutan na niya yung mga statements niya. Isang statement, magkukontradict sa another statement. Kaya talo talaga siya. Ang problema nakasira sa ibang tao. No? Yun ang masama. But a person who is wise, a person who is following the path of righteousness, no, maayos, dahan-dahan, no, tinitignan ng lakbayan, turning away from evil. Roy Oliver Disney, the older brother of Walt Disney, he's a businessman at the same time. Sabi, isa sa mga founder ng Walt Disney Company. It's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. Hindi na mahirap gumawa ng desisyon kapag alam mo kung anong tinatayuan. No? Kaya nga yung drawing the line, yung ang actually title ni Ryan Holiday dito, draw the line, your standard. Ano ba yung standard mo? Ano bang tinatayuan mo? Ano bang pundasyon mo? But if you're abandoning the principles, you will be destroyed. Another example ni Ryan, it's like the disgraced statesman and General Alcibiades. In the Peloponnesian War, he first fought for his home country and greatest love, Athens. No, yun ang bansa niya eh. Then driven out for a drunken crime he may or may not have committed, he defected to Sparta, Athens' sworn enemy. Weird, di ba? No, nagka-problema siya sa bansa niya, lumipat sa ibang bansa, kaaway, mortal na kaaway. Then running afoul again of the Spartans, he defected to Persia, the sworn enemy of both. Parehong kaaway ng Sparta at saka ng Athens yung Persia. Finally, he was recalled to Athens where his ambitious plans to invade Sicily drove the Athenians to their ultimate ruin. Grabe, yung sirang ginawa niya sa bansa. Why? Because of pride. It ruins not only his life, but the lives of people as well. Kaya malungkot ang pagkasulat ni Ryan, portion po dito. Ang pagkasulat niya, ego kills what we love. Sometimes it comes close to killing us too. Kung magkakaya yung sinasabi, sulat ni Ryan na si Dove Charney, di ba? Supposed to be ipinaglalaban niya yung kanyang mga co-employees. Nangyari, lalo pang napasama, lalo pang nawalan ng trabaho. Dahil sa nasira yung kumpanya. Bakit? Pride eh. Arrogance. So he became careless. Another example pa ni Ryan Holiday. It's interesting that Alexander Hamilton, who of all the founding fathers met the most tragic and unnecessary end, would have wise words on this topic on pride and But indeed he does. If only he could have remembered his own advice before fighting his fatal duel with Vice President Aaron Burr. Kasi ang istorya, inaral ko po tinignan ko po kung ano ba nangyari sa kanila. Nangyari pala, meron pong isang situation po, meron isang tao nagsabi na naringgan daw niya itong si Alexander Hamilton, may sinabi against dito kay Aaron Burr. So parang either totoo or either don't, parang chismis. So kumalat, sinasabi ni Hamilton, wala naman ako sinabi ganyan. So nagalit si Aaron Burr. So ang nangyari po, during that time, parang to settle their differences, barilan na lang. Parang western movies po. Diba, kung nanonood kayo nung bata, nakakapanood ng tawag Wild Wild West. Diba, yung unahan, pabilisan ng bunot ng baril. So, yun po ang laban na ginawa nila. And sad to say, naunahan siya ni Aaron Burr, siya ang tinamaan, and later on, namatay siya. pangit na katapusan sa buhay. Pero kasi ito yung sinabi niya, kung naalala lang niya sinasabi ni Ryan Holiday, kung naalala lang ni Alexander Hamilton, yung kanyang sinabi sa isang tao, kaibigan niya, who was in serious financial and legal trouble. Ang pagkasabi niya, act with fortitude and honor. Ganda ng statement. Ito pa yung dagdag ni Alexander Hamilton dun sa kanyang kaibigan. Sinulat niya, if you cannot reasonably hope for a favorable extrication, do not plunge deeper. Have the courage to make a full stop. Kung hindi ka makahingi ng kumbaga kapatawaran o whatever doon, huwag mo nang ibaon yung sarili mo. Huminto ka na. A full stop. Pagkasulat ni Ryan, a full stop. It's not that these people would have quit everything. It's that a fighter who cannot tap out or a boxer who cannot recognize when it's time to retire gets hurt. Seriously so, you have to be able to see the bigger picture. Makita mo yung kasi minsan yabang, di ba? Ayaw mag-quit. Tapos ka na Tapos na yung panahon mo. Napatunayan mo na magaling ka na, wag mo nang ipagpatuloy. Minsan ganun fighter and a boxer, diba? Kaya, tuloy pa rin. Probably because of the money or pride. And yung last na laban, fatal. Ngayon last na laban, karoon ng injury. Hindi mo rin na-enjoy. The problem was when ego is in control, who can? Diba? Hirap Let's say you have failed. And let's even say it was your fault. And sometimes tayo nagagawa natin yan publicly. It's not fun. Mahirap yun. But the questions remain, itong questions are you going to make it worse? Or are you going to emerge from this with your dignity and character intact? Are you going to live to fight another day? Yun naman questions na dapat natin masagot lalong gagrabe, sasama ka pa. Kaya ang example ni Ryan dyan, pagka isang team, they're going to lose a game, ang coach, tinatawag sila daw, hindi para, para magsinungaling sa kanila. Siguro siya sabi, talo na tayo dito, mukhang hindi na tayo mananalo. Talagang hindi natin gabi or time itong game na ito. He would remind them of who they are and what they're capable of and urges them to go back. Sige, laban lang. Baka sakali mapanalo pa natin or hindi naman masadly, sige lang, laro lang kayo. Or ang ginagawa daw ng coach, ipapasok yung ibang mga players na hindi usually nakakalaro para mabigyan ng opportunity, magkaroon ng experience. Pero, kumbaga, babalik na lang sila. May sulit ni Ryan, most trouble is temporary unless you make that not so. Recovery is not grand. It's one step in front of the other unless your cure is more of the disease. Diba? Ang hirap minsan makabalik pero pwedeng makabalik. Ang sinasabi ko po dito, okay lang na nag-fail. Pwedeng makarecover. Minsan matagal. Kaya ang inaano natin, hindi yung ma-avoid natin ng failure, kundi yung failure na dahil sa abandoning principles. Dahil sa maling mga kagagawan. Only ego thinks embarrassment or failure is more than what they are. History is full of people who suffered abject humiliations yet recovered to have a long and impressive careers. May mga politicians natalo, nakabawi, nakaahon, pinaganda pa nila. Umangat sila, nakilala pa sila. Marami mga actors, yung pelikula nila failed, nag-flop. Meron silang dating pelikula, ganda. Susunod na pelikula, flop. Walang, ang mga critics, hindi maganda ang comments. Yung mga authors na, yung unang sulat nila, maganda. Tapos later on, nag-flop din. Celebrities na marami mga blunders. Di ba? Ang lungkot lang sa ibang celebrities. So talaga, umangat, naging drug addict, na hindi nakayanan yung success. Again, ego is the problem. Yung iba nakabawi, yung iba nasira. Patay. Malungkot. Parents who made mistakes, entrepreneurs, executives, athletes na hindi nakuha agad, pero pinagbutihan lang, tapos gumaling. Ang dami yung story. So, ibig sabihin, pwede Ang question po, are we gonna make this a lose-lose situation or for ourselves and involve everyone? Para bang iba, total talo na ako, total masama na nangyari. Lahat kayo, dadamay ko na lang. Parang ganun si DeLorean, dinamay na lang ang lahat ng tao. Parang ganun si Dove Charney. Nadamay na lang tuloy iba, kawawa naman iba, walang kinalaman doon sa kalokohan nila. Nadamay. Or will it be a lose and then win situation? Ang ganda po ng Proverbs kasi ito po ang isang pangako na gusto kong pangawakan natin sa time na to Psalm 37 verses 23 and 24. And man's steps are established by the Lord, and he takes pleasure in his way. Though he falls, he will not be overwhelmed because the Lord holds his hand. No, ang susi sa buhay, pasakop sa Diyos. Kung tayo lang talagang magpe-fail, kung tayo lang talagang, dahil sa ego, sisirain natin sarili natin at ibang tao. Ang kagandahan nito, di ba? Ang sabi, ini-establish ng Diyos ang lakbayin mo. At hindi lang ang Diyos ini-establish, kundi kagalakan sa Diyos yan. Gustong-gusto ng Diyos gawin yan sa iyong buhay. Ayusin niya ang kaparaanan, ang lakbayan, ang path ng ating buhay. At kung sakasakaling sumabit nga tayo, yun ang verse 24, hindi naman tayo hindi niya tayo abandon ha. Bakit? Hawak niya ang iyong kamay. Ibig sabihin, ibabangon ka niya. That is if you like. That is if you want. That is if you make a choice na, Lord, ahon mo po ako. Unless otherwise, gusto mo manatili doon sa ganung buhay. Because at any given time in the circle of life, we may be aspiring, succeeding, or failing. And though right now, halimbawa sa panahon ngayon, talagang nagpe-fail ka. But with wisdom and we understand that these positions are temporary, transitory. No? Hindi, yan nagbabago-bago So when success begins to slip, nawawala from your fingers, for whatever reason, the response isn't to grip and claw so hard that you shatter it to pieces. Kailangan balik tayo sa aspirational phase. You must get back to first principles and best practices. Balik lang. Ganda ng pagkasulat tuloy ulit ni Ryan Holiday. He who will do anything to avoid failure will almost certainly do something worthy of a failure. The only real failure is abandoning your principles. Ito, dito ko na kinuha. Dito yung in-entitle talaga yung portion na tong principle. Abandoning your principles. Yun ang real failure. Real failure hindi yung sumabit lang Ayaw di ba? Or real failure din kasi pagka yung ayaw mo nang umahon. Failure ka na. Pero ang totoong failure lalo, hindi lang ayaw mo nang umahon, kundi dahil sa inabandon naman yung principle. Para bang wala ka ng pakialam. No, they made parang a survey, or study sa mga Americans with the question, what are you willing to do for $10 million? Anong pwede mo ipalit? 2/3 of Americans polled would agree to at least one, some to several of the following. Ito yung mga answers nila. Would abandon their entire family, 25%. Ipagpapalit nila ang kanilang pamilya for $10 million. Would abandon their church, 25%. Would become prostitutes for a week or more, 23%. Would give up their American citizenships, 16%. Would leave their spouse, 16%. Would withhold testimony and let a murderer go free, 10%. Would kill a stranger, 7%. Would put their children up for adoption, 3%. No, people are willing to do that in exchange of money. No? Yun ang principle nila Yan ang prinsipyo nila sa buhay, di ba? Basta may pera ako. Pero ipagpapalit nila yun. Yung mga bagay na yan. They're willing to do that. Kaya Proverbs 27 verse 19 would read, as in water a face reflects the face, so the heart of a person reflects the person. Kaya yun doon nakita yung nilalaman ng puso ng mga tao Because they're willing to exchange itong mga magagandang bagay for $10 million or willing silang gawin yung mga masasama in exchange for $10 million. Kaya alam mo Nalalaman mo sa kanilang sagot, sa lumalabas sa kanilang mga labi, yung kinalaman ng puso nila. Di ba? Sabi nga ni Jesus, it is not what enters the mouth of a person that defiles the person. It is what comes out of the mouth. Kung ano yung lumalabas sa heart, yun ang mga pananalita niya, yung mga aksyon niya sa kanyang ginagawa sa buhay, yun ang nilalaman ng kanyang puso. Kaya dun, yun ang pagkatao ng tao. No? That's why J. Brad Britton, an American business owner, said, do the right thing, not the easy thing. The easy thing is to exchange, $10 million for those things. Hindi pwede ipagpalit para makuha nila yung $10 million. But do the right thing. Gawin mo yung tama. An example is Robert Oppenheimer. He was one man responsible for the development for the atomic bomb of the United States used against Japan at the close of World War II. He was born in 1904 in New York City and showed an early interest in science. He entered Harvard at 18 and graduated 3 years later with honors. He continued his studies, kumbaga nagpatuloy pa siya ng kanyang pag-aaral, kumbaga in Europe, in various universities in Europe prior to teaching at California Institute of Technology. He was considered one of the top 10 theoretical physicists in the world and specialized in the study of subatomic particles and gamma rays. From 1943, he began directing 4,500 men and women at Los Alamos, New Mexico, with sole purpose to build an atomic bomb. Imagine 4,500 people under him. Excuse me. 2 years and $2 billion later, they had successfully detonated the first atomic bomb. When he saw what he had made, Robert Oppenheimer underwent a radical revaluation of his values, a value inversion. No? Upon seeing the first fireball and mushroom cloud, he quoted from a saying or a book which says, I am become death. Naging kamatayan ako. Kumbaga sabi niya, naging cause siya ng kamatayan. And so because of that, nung makita niya yung effect ng atomic bomb na yon, na pinag-aralan niya with 4,500 people, with all his galing, 2 months later, he resigned his position at Los Alamos and spent much of the remainder of his life trying to undo the damage, trying to get the genie of atomic weapons back in the battle. There are certain individuals who, in a flash, so to speak, like Oppenheimer, see that all they once valued is really of no lasting value at all. Their entire life has been turned on its head. Everything is upside down. They see with painful clarity that the very things they prize most in life are in reality worthless baubles. Or something of little value. Walang halaga. Kaya, nagkaroon siya ng reawakening Re-evaluating yung kanyang pinangawakan. Is this all there is? Yung kanyang galing, doon ba gagamitin? Kaya he decided he would rather quit. Kaya yun doon malalaman, are we willing to do the right thing? Are we willing to do the easy thing? Are we willing to get a certain amount of money in exchange of destroying our lives? Destroying people, abandoning people. So that's a choice that we need to make. Again, it's all right to fail. We cannot avoid failure. Ang kailangan lang natin avoid yung failure because of abandoning principles. Let's go to the last point. No? Ang title ni dito is Maintain Your Own Scorecard. But I'd like to re-entitle it as Stay Focused, Do Better. George Lucas, you know him as the creator of Star Wars and Indiana Jones franchises. Ito pagkasabi niya, always remember your focus determines your reality. On April 16, 2000, ang story, ang example ni Ryan Holiday, the New England Patriots drafted an extra quarterback out of the University of Michigan. Dagdag na lang na quarterback. No, if you're familiar with National Football League, American football, yung quarterback parang point guard yan kumbaga sa basketball. Yan ang na orchestrate ng plays nila. So they scouted this guy thoroughly and had their eye on him for some time. Seeing that he was still available, they took him. It was the 6th round and the 199th pick of the draft. If you're a sports guy in the NBA o NFL, naiintindihan kung kaya nakakaintindi sa draft pick, di ba? Yung mga number 1 to 10, yun ang mga sikat, yun ang mga sa college, yung mga magagaling, kaya yun ang ini-scout, no? Ito itong tao na to, 199 na 6th round na, ika-anim na ikot na. Ang dami na, almost 200 na bago siya nakuha. The young quarterback's name was Tom Brady. If you're familiar with American football, you will understand that this guy is different. He was 4th string at the beginning of his rookie season. By his 2nd season, he was a starter. New England won the Super Bowl that year. Brady was named MVP. 2nd year pa lang MVP na. In terms of return on investment, ang ganda pagkasulat ni Ryan dito, it's probably the single greatest draft pick in the history of football. 4 Super Bowl rings out of 6 appearances. Kasi nung sinulat ni Ryan ito, 2016 yung libro, 4 pa lang napanalo niya. Actually, 6 na by this time. 14 starting seasons, 172 wins, 428 touchdowns, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, 58,000 yards, 10 Pro Bowls, and more division titles than any quarterback in history. It's not even finished playing dividends. Brady may still have many more seasons left in him. Kaya nga, after nung pagkasulat ni Ryan, 2 pa na pa-champion niya dito sa And then, ika-7th, nasa ibang team naman siya. Napa-champion niya. Ito, recent lang. So you'd think that the Patriots front office would be ecstatic about how it turned out, and indeed they were. They were also disappointed, deeply so in themselves. Brady's surprising abilities meant that the Patriots scouting reports were way off. No, dahil nakita nila yung galing nito, bakit huli na natin nakita yan? Kala ko ba na-scout natin mabuti yan? Kala ko ba nakita natin yan? Siyempre, may mga scout yan, pupunta sa ibang eskwela. Ito mga possible na pwede lang kunin eh. No? Bakit na-miss nila? Buti na lang hindi nakuha ng iba. Bakit 6th round na? Actually, kaya lang siya nakapasok kasi yung kumbaga, yung unang quarterback, kumbaga, star player, si Drew Bledsoe, nagkaroon ng injury. Kaya napwersa silang gamitin siya. Doon lang nila nakita yung potential. So even though their bet paid off, the Patriots honed in on the specific intelligence failure that could have prevented the pick from happening in the first place. Not that they were nitpicking or indulging in perfectionism, they had higher standards of performance to adhere to. Grabe! Kaya sabi ng you're not as good as you think, you don't have it all figured out. Stay focused, do better. Hindi mo na-figure, hindi nila akalain, hindi nila naisip lahat yun. Ang ganda rin ng pagkasabi ng another Tom Peters, American writer on business management practices. Ang pagkasulat niya, excellent firms don't believe in excellence, only in constant improvement and constant change. Grabe, hindi daw excellence kasi minsan ang concept ng excellence ay excelente na tayo, huminto na tayo, excelente na tayo. Hindi, wag gamitin yung excellence, constant improvement. Ang Japanese called it kaizen. I've been telling that again and again. Nung nag-aaral po ako regarding mga quotations, naghahanap po ako, tinignan ko po yung kaizen. Ang dami-daming concept ng kaizen ng mga quotations po. I just don't have time to share that with you. Kaizen, improving the improve. Constant improvement, constant change. In the Christian life, the Apostle Peter rendered it this way. 2 Peter 1 verses 5 to 7. I've been talking about business and sports and Pero sa Christian life, kung mananampalataya tayo, itong pagkasulat naman ni Peter. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith. No? Dagdagan mo. Anong dadagdag mo sa pananampalataya? Nagsimula ang ating lakbayin sa Diyos ng pananampalataya, pero hindi natatapos ng pananampalataya na kumilala ka, sumuko ka ng buhay mo kay Jesus, tapos na. Hindi. Add. Make every effort nga to add eh. Ano ang pagkasulat ni Peter? To your faith, goodness. To goodness, knowledge. To knowledge, self-control. To self-control, perseverance. To perseverance, godliness. To godliness, mutual affection. And to mutual affection, love. Grabe, ang daming idadagdag sa Christian life. Para saan ba yan? Bakit kailangan dagdagan? Bakit tayo kailangan nag-i-improve? Bakit? Bakit mo kailangan sa Christian life na nag-i-improve? Verse 8, ang pagkasulat ni Peter, for if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. May gamit. Kasi may ataking mangyayari. May labanan, may battle tayong lalabanan sa buhay para hindi tayo ineffective at unproductive. Hindi yung knowledge na belief lang, mga doctrinal knowledge about Jesus Christ, kundi yung personal knowledge with Jesus Christ na applicable sa buhay, sa pang-araw-araw na buhay. Para, sabi nga, pagkasulat niya, increasing measure, angat ng angat, hindi natatapos. No? Tuloy-tuloy ang pag-increase. Yes, parang minsan gumaganon tayo sa ating kasalanan. Pero babawi, bumaksak, sigla, bawi lang. Hindi naman pag ganun tayo eh. None is like that eh. Siyempre, gaganon tayo, sige, pero maangat pa rin. Hindi humihinto ng pagangat. Pag bumalik tayo sa Patriots, the Patriots saw the Brady pick as being more lucky than smart. And though some people are fine giving themselves credit for luck, they weren't. In the mga Patriots, hindi. No one would say the Patriots or any team in the NFL are without ego. But in this instance, instead of celebrating or congratulating themselves, they put their heads back down and focus on how to get even better. That's what makes humility such a powerful force organizationally, personally, professionally. Kaya, the Patriots, ang concept nila, paano natin para hindi na tayo maulit yun. Imagine kung hindi nila nakuha si Tom, na ganun pala kagaling, o lumabas ng ganun kagaling. No? Kaya, ang taong, yung mga failure sa buhay, ginagamit nilang stepping stones to get better. Kaya, organizationally, personally, professionally. Brian Tracy, the Canadian-American motivational speaker, said, if you wish to achieve worthwhile things in your personal and career life, you must become a worthwhile person in your own self-development. Self-development. Kaya nga mga companies, di ba, meron tinatawag na R&D, Research and Development. I-improve nila yung produkto nila o gagawa sila ng mga panabagong produkto para yung company nila would stay afloat. Kasi ang tindi ng competition sa business. So, ganun din sa buhay, self-development. Nung inaral ko pa rin po ito, tingnan ko, pinakita ko pong article regarding si Tom Brady. No? When Tom Brady decided to leave the Patriots and ventured into free agency as a 42-year-old, critics wondered if he would be able to find much success outside of the team he had won 6 Super Bowls with. Yung mga critics, 42 years old na siya eh. Makakapanalo pa kaya siya? Sa ibang team? Yung team, ang galing na nung team nila eh. Bakit lumipat pa siya, kumbaga? No? Brady ended up joining the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And ang galing, napat-champion niya kaagad. First year pa lang niya. And head coach Bruce Bryan said in an interview that the veteran quarterbacks left New England because he wanted to show that he could win a different way. Kasi ang inaano ni Tom Brady, kaya ko makapanalo sa ibang kaparaanan. Ang sabi ni Arian, yung head coach niya ngayon, I think his competitive spirit is so strong. He wanted to do it. He wanted to show people, I've never said anything bad about Bill Belichick, yung dati niyang coach. I know everybody tries to say I do. His records speak for itself. He is probably the greatest one ever. But I think Brady wanted to try a different way. Bakit? Kasi ito daw si Brady eh. Brady has built his career on constantly motivating himself to be better, and it's clear winning a ring outside of New England meant a lot to him. Na maipa-champion niya in a better way. So, when I look at another athlete, LeBron James, I'm not really a fan of LeBron James. He's good. He's good. I like him, pero para bang magaling siya talaga. Pero at his age now, why he is still competitive? Kasi LeBron James would spend $1.5 million a year at least, to take care of his physical body. In his career, 18-19 season niya, wala siyang major injury. Groin lang one time 2 years ago, yung season na yun lang siya na-injure, na matagal siya hindi nakalaro, pero he would take care of his body, he would improve, alaga itong si LeBron James. That's why napa-champion niya ang team from una Cavalier siya, pero hindi siya nag-champion doon, napa-champion niya sa ang Miami Heat, then balik sa Cavaliers, napa-champion niya, LA napa-champion niya. So, parang ganun, Tom Brady. He wanted probably to become a champion in a different way, and he has done it. And he's still competitive at his age. Magaling pa rin siya. Bakit ganun? Improving the improve. I like what Bruce Lee said Sabi niya, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. I hope you got that. Nala siyang takot doon sa tao na 10,000 times sumipa. Iba-iba. Takot siya yung minamaster ang pagsipa. 10,000 times isang klaseng kick. Tapos 10,000 times another kick. 10,000 times, iba na naman. 10,000 times, iba, isang klase. So, para ba, yun yung sinasabi ni Malcolm Gladwell from the book Outliers. It takes 10,000 to become very good at something you do. At ang dagdag na ngayon, it takes 20,000 times na gagawin mo para maging master ka sa isang So, ganun. Kaya, si Bruce Lee is a master. Kasi grabe yung focus, grabe yung becoming better. Kaya probably Bruce Lee is unmatched up to now. Nobody has probably matched his skill. In spite na marami namang magagaling na lumabas, pero kakaiba siya. So why? Focused and doing it better. I'd like to show you a video clip by Julius Sevilla. The title is The Power of Focus. Ang ganda po ng concept niya regarding this concept of focus. Let's watch the video.
The Power of Focus. Let me tell you why it's so important to pay attention to what you focus on. Because what you focus on, you find. What you focus on grows. What you focus on seems real. And ultimately, what you focus on, you become. The key is to focus on what you want. But unfortunately, most of us focus on what we don't want. We focus on what's wrong with our life. We focus on what we don't have. We focus on limitations. We focus on our failures. And we focus on our fears. You have to realize that where focus goes, energy flows. And when you choose to focus on the things that you hate, you will continue to magnify and attract all the things that you don't want. So, you really have to take full responsibility on what you focus on by aligning your focus to what you truly want. Remember, your mind is being conditioned by what you focus on most of the time. So focus on what's working, and it will set your mind right. Focus on what you have, and gratitude will fill your heart. Focus on possibilities, and it will open endless opportunities. Focus on the lesson and not on the hurt, and you will continue to grow. Focus on every blessing, and it will enrich your life. So be aware of where your attention is, because that's where your intentions are. Because ultimately, what you focus on, you become. So, what are you looking at right now? Well, I hope it's something beautiful and will serve your highest good. Be amazing, and God bless.
Ang ganda po ng statements nitong si Julius Sevilla. No? Let me just reiterate some of them. What you focus on, you become. Di ba? Totoo eh. Saan ka nakakonsentrate? Anong pinag-iisipan mo? Yun na nagiging kung ano tayo eh. Ang problema, sabi niya, most of us focus on what we don't want. We focus on what's wrong with our life. We focus on the negative things of life. We focus on what we lack rather than what we have. We focus on the negative things ng mga pagkakamali ng mga tao instead of ano yung tama na nagawa nila. Kaya gulo, sira ang buhay. I have seen that again and again with people. Sad. No? Mali ang tinutuunan ng kanilang puso at pag-iisip eh. No? Focus sila sa mga limitations nila, focus sila sa mga failures nila, focus sila sa mga fears nila, ka-focus sila sa kung saan-saan, mga mali. When you choose to focus on the things that you hate, you will continue to magnify and attract all the things that you don't want. Di ba? Kaya nga, mga tao nakafocus ka doon sa mga taong galit ka. Yung mga taong sumira sa iyo, probably may ginawa sa iyo. Kaya kita mo, no? Ikaw rin nasisira. No? Kaya, sabi niya, your mind is being conditioned by what you focus on most of the time. Gusto ko lang i-reiterate din yung portion dito, focus on what you have and gratitude will fill your heart. Maraming tao, baksak. Maraming tao sira ang buhay kasi nakafocus sila o anong wala sila eh. Hindi sila nakafocus, salamat Lord, mayroon pa ako nito. Maraming mga tao hindi makatulog sa buhay. Alam niyo yung advice ng isang doktor from the book How to Make Disease Disappear ni Rangan Chatterjee. Ang kanyang advice, bago ka matulog, instead na negatibong iniisip mo, magpasalamat ka doon sa mga bagay. 3 bagay na pasalamatan mo ang Diyos sa iyong buhay. Makakatulong yan sa pagtulog. Kaya yung iba hindi makatulog kasi nga nakafocus sa fear, nakafocus sa hate, nakafocus sa kung anong wala sila. Kaya hindi sila makatulog. Pag gising sa umaga, laki pa rin ang mata. Hindi ako nakatulog. Ang ina-advise ngayon, dapat nga maka 7 to 9 hours tayo na sleep eh. Deep sleep ang tawag. Ibig sabihin, yung talagang paggising mo, wow, parang wala man deep sleep ka, refresh ka paggising mo eh. Kaso pagka abala tayo, worry tayo sa buhay, hindi tayo makatulog, physically maapektuhan. Meron pong story, ilang years ago, isang executive, bata pa, nag-exercise, kumakain ng tama, namatay. Bakit? Kulang sa tulog. So, okay, kahit nag-exercise ka, pero ang mind mo bothered, Hindi ka rin makatulog. O masyado ka abala sa trabaho. Kaya nga focus eh. Kaya napakahalaga yung focus eh. So, kaya, pagka-focus sa failure ang kalalabasan. But we focus on, yes, the failure is there, but we'll rise again. Then, makakaangat tayo. Kaya nga Proverbs 22 verse 29 would say, do you see any truly competent workers? They will serve kings rather than working for ordinary people. The New Living Testament says, translation. Diba? Alam mo yung competent, they would become better, they would focus on the right things. The Message translation rendered it this way: observe people who are good at their work. Skilled workers are always in demand and admired. They don't take a backseat to anyone. Ang ganda. Parang commentary na nga yung translation na yun eh. The NIV rendered it this way: do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of low rank. No? Yung mga nag-i-improve, yung mga ini-improve nila yung skills nila. Para bang kahit gaano katalim ang 'di ba ang kutsilyo, pag gamit ka ng gamit minsan pumupurol eh, unless of course yung may mga kutsilyo na sobrang mamahal na supposed to be hindi pumupurol. Pero pag yung ordinary kutsilyo ginamit natin, 'di ba kailangan mo hasain eh. So parang ganoon yung skill, improve mo yung skill natin. Kaya here's our choice eh. Yung mga taong gano'n, they hold themselves to a standard that, para kakaiba sila eh. Hindi nila iniisip, hindi sila nakafocus doon sa ano iniisip ng mga tao on them, whether good or bad. Nakafocus sila doon sa standards nila. Nakafocus sila kung paano nila improve sarili nila. That's why, when you look at Paul himself, when you read, familiar na kayo dito sigurado sa verses na ito eh. Verses 12 and 13 ng Philippians 3. New Living Translation rendered it this way: I don't mean to say that I have already achieved these things or that I have already reached perfection. Yun si Paul na nagsasabi. Hindi niya sinusulat yung mga bagay prior to that verses. Sinulat niya na hindi, nakaabot na ako, dami ko na na-accomplish. Magaling na ako. Pero ang kanyang attitude? But I press on to possess that perfection for which Christ Jesus first possessed me. No, dear brothers and sisters, I have not achieved it. But I focus on this one thing, forgetting the past, looking forward to what lies ahead. That's why I like Paul so much. Of course, lahat naman ng mga apostles, talagang you could learn from each one of them eh. But from Paul, you would learn when you look at his life, at one point he will say, I am the least among the apostles. But as you look at his writings, na nag-grow siya, susunod na sinulat niya, I am least among the saints. Mga apostles, mataas yung rango nun eh. Least siya doon, pero at least apostle pa rin siya. Ngayon, saints, mas mababa pa ako sa mga saints. Pero last na point at the latter part of his life, almost at the end of his life, ang sabi niya, I am the worst of sinners. Dude, the more he is learning and growing in Christ, the more he is humbled. Grabe si Paul. Kaya, the way God had used him, hindi lang siya skillful, hindi lang siya matalino, kundi ego is the enemy. And Paul knew that. That's why ego cannot see both sides of the issue eh. Ang sabi nga daw po, vain men never hear anything but praise, di ba? Hinahangad ng vain men na ano yung papuri na makukuha niya eh. That's why, you might see egomaniacs with temporary leads, but rarely lasting runs of it. Makaka-umpisa sila, pero hindi sila makakapanitili. Kasi winning is not enough eh. People can win in spite na kahit salbahe sila, nakakapanalo pa rin sila. Minsan nandadaya lang sila kaya sila panalo. Pero no, kung winning lang ang pinag-uusapan, no, okay sana, kaya lang hindi lang yun eh. No? Anyone can win. But not everyone is the best possible version of themselves. Because when you take ego out of the equation, other people's opinions and external markers won't matter much eh. Wala ka nang pakialam sa mga tao, ano man sabihin nila eh. George Washington Carver, an American agricultural scientist and inventor, he said 99% of the failures come from people who have the habit of making excuses. No? Kaya we have seen that politicians, CEOs, athletes, no, yung mga behavior nila excusing themselves, so passing on the blame to others, no? Hindi sila willing to take the responsibility kung ano man ang ano nila, and no, they don't want to grow. No? Luke 12 verse 48, second portion of Luke wrote, "From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and to whom they entrusted much, of him they will ask all the more." Grabe, kung anong malaki man ang nabigay sa'yo, mas malaking responsibility dyan eh. That's why Brian Tracy again said, decide upon your major definite purpose in life and then organize all your activities around it. Purpose, focus, goal. Hanapin, stay tayo doon. Then, do something better. Kaya, hindi natin kinukompare lang sarili natin. Another portion na sinulat ni Luke, Luke 16 verse 10, Jesus was saying, kumbaga, one who is faithful in a very little thing is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. Now, Jesus is saying that eh. Pagka naging tapat tayo dun sa maliliit, focus tayo dun, improve tayo, sige lang, tapat ka lang, increase mo lang, pagputihan mo, di baling konti lang, alam mo sa umpisa, sige lang, aral, tiyaga, aral, tiyaga, aral, tiyaga. Bibigyan ka ng mas malalaking responsibility. Dennis Waite, an American motivational speaker, said, "Don't dwell on what went wrong. Instead, focus on what to do next. Spend your energies on moving forward toward finding the answer." Move forward. Find the answer. Ano ba talaga ang mahalaga sa buhay? I'd like to show you the last video. That last video is entitled, "This Race Called Life." It's a story of a boy and an old man, a wise man. Ang bata, merong ginawa ang bata, may pinagagawa itong matanda sa bata na to. And let's see later on anong insights ang makuha natin. Let's watch the video.
Once upon a time, there was a young, athletic boy, hungry for success, for whom winning was everything. And success was measured just by winning. One day, the boy was preparing himself for a running competition in his small village, himself and two other young boys to compete. A large crowd had gathered to witness the sporting spectacle, and a wise old man, upon hearing of the little boy, had traveled far to bear witness also. The race commenced, looking like a level heat at the finishing line. But sure enough, the boy dug deep and called on his determination, strength, and power. He took the winning line and was first. The crowd was ecstatic and cheered and waved at the boy. The wise man remained still and calm, expressing no sentiment. The little boy, however, felt proud and important. A second race was called, and two new, young, fit challengers came forward to run with the little boy. The race was started, and sure enough, the little boy came through and finished first once again. The crowd was ecstatic again and cheered and waved at the boy. The wise man remained still and calm, again expressing no sentiment. The little boy, however, felt proud and important. Another race, pleaded the little boy. The wise old man stepped forward and presented the little boy with 2 new challengers, an elderly frail lady and a blind man. "What is this?" quizzed the little boy. "This is no race," he exclaimed. "Race," said the wise man. The race was started, and the boy was the only finisher. The other 2 challengers left standing at the starting line. The little boy was ecstatic. He raised his arms in delight. The crowd, however, were silent, showing no sentiment toward the little boy. "What has happened? Why not do the people join in my success?" he asked the wise old man. "Race again," replied the wise man. "This time, finish together, all 3 of you. Finish together," continued the wise man. The little boy thought a little, stood in the middle of the blind man and the frail old lady, and then took the 2 challengers by the hand. The race began, and the little boy walked slowly, ever so slowly, to the finishing line and crossed it. The crowd were ecstatic and cheered and waved at the boy. The wise man smiled, gently nodding his head. The little boy felt proud and important. "Old man, I understand not. Who are the crowd cheering for? Which one of us 3? Asked the little boy. The wise old man looked into the little boy's eyes, placing his hands on the boy's shoulders, and replied softly, "Little boy, for this race you have won much more than in any race you have ever ran before. And for this race, the crowd cheer not for any winner." You see, in life, in your life, what are you running for? Are you hungry for success? Is winning the only measurement for you in your life? Who are you running against? And if you always win against everybody, then soon the people will stop cheering for you. At the end of your life, if you look back, the question is, who was running next to you in this race? If they were weaker and old, did you help them to get across the line? Did you all finish together? Because that is the best race you can ever run. So run this race called life. But don't forget, it is not important if you win. It is important how you run this race. This is Dare to Do Motivation Stories. Thanks for watching, and stay blessed.
Ang ganda ng insight ulit, ano? Grabe yung video na to. Yung bata, tingin niya, magaling na siya. Panalo, mga unang kalaban niya, panalo, pangalawang kalaban. Tapos later on, inilaban siya ng matanda sa isang bulag at saka isang matandang babae, di ba? O panalo ka. Panalo siya, syempre. Hindi nga nakatakbo, hindi nga nakaalis sa starting line eh. No, pero ang tingin ng bata, galing siya. Akala niya, proud siya. No? Pero, wala kita, bakit hindi natuwa ang mga tao? Until sabi ng matanda, di ba, hawakan mo yung kamay ng bulag at saka yung yung may tungkod. No? Sabay kayo manalo. Palakpakan yung mga tao. Hindi niya maintindihan. Sino pinapalakpakan nila? Sabi ng matanda doon sa, "Little boy, for this race you have won much more than in any race you have ever run before. For this race, the crowd cheer, not for any winner." Nakita nila yung ginawa mo, yun ang pinapalakpakan nila. Ganun sa buhay, it's not just winning. Yes, are you hungry for success? Is winning the only measurement for you in your life? Who are you running against? If you always win against everybody, and soon the people will stop cheering for you, baka maasar na rin yung mga tao sa'yo. Lalo kung yumabang eh. Diba? Maraming ganyan eh. Pag palaging panalo, diba? Yabang na nila. Diba? Kaya nga minsan, para makapanalo, mandadaya. Yan, Lance Armstrong, ganun eh. Nakita natin yan. No, at the end of your life, if you look back, the question is, who was running next to you? No? Hindi lang yung, okay, panalo ka, ikaw nag-iisa ka lang. Hindi. Sino yung tinulungan mo makapanalo sa buhay? It's not about us only winning in life. Do we try to help others win as well in their life? Oh? Yun ang parang yung sinasabi, tinuturo ng matanda dito sa bata. Yung para sa ating buhay. Yes, we need to stay focused. Yes, we need to become better. Improve pa tayo. Pagalingan pa natin. Yes, no, we aspire to win. Hindi yung mentality na, sige lang, patalo lang ako. Hindi. Pangit yun. Ang problema, ang maganda sa buhay, hindi lang yung ako lang nanalo, wala akong pakialam sa inyo. Kundi, sino bang pwede kong kasama manalo rin sa buhay? No, change your life from competition to contribution, then life will become beautiful. Kaya hindi ego Ego kasing kalaban natin Don't try to defeat other. Try to win everybody's heart. Of course, hindi mo lahat mapiplease. No? If you wanna run fast, di ba? You run alone. If you wanna run far, you run along with others. Kung gusto mo mabilis ikaw, nag-iisa ka. Ayun, nag-iisa ka. Pero kung gusto mong malayong malalakbay mo, magsama kayo mata. Kasi pag may kausap ka, enjoy ka. Lagi naman sa buhay, hindi naman tayo lang We have other people who will be with us in our victories. We will have people with us even in our defeats, in our failures. It is nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. Yun po ang laman sa buhay. Aspire, succeed, and fail. Cycle ng buhay, paikot-ikot. Ganun Kaya lang, for everything that comes next, ego is still the enemy. Kaya pag-ingatan natin sarili natin. That's why there is a Celtic saying, see much, study much, suffer much. That is the path to wisdom. What you face right now could, should, and can be such a path. Anong lakbay natin? Anong gagamitin natin? Ego? Or the right heart? Kasi, andyan aspiration would lead to success. Success would create some adversities along the way, and the new vision, kumbaga, magkaroon ka na naman ng aspiration in the midst of adversity. So, parang endless loop All of that exists in this continuum Hindi puro ka na lang aspire, puro ka success, puro failure. Hindi, paikot-ikot po yun Kaya lang, kalaban natin sa lahat ng circle of light na yon is the ego. Kaya kailangan ng pag-ingatan natin sarili natin. That's why Ryan Holiday, to end finally yung kanyang book, meron po siyang mantra na isinulat. It's simple. Sabi niya, not to aspire or seek out of ego, to have success without ego, to push through failure with strength, not ego. Kaya po, 3 parts. First part, aspire. The theme, humble in our aspirations. The second part, success. The theme, gracious in our success. And the third part, failure. And the theme, resilient in our failures. Nawa ko na matulungan tayo ng message na to nasa ating pong lakbayan. Andyan again, hand of God is there. It is the pleasure of God to guide us in our path. Andyan po, may Diyos po na pwede mong tumulong sa atin. Most especially in the times of failure in life. Minsan nakakaligtaan natin ng Diyos when we aspire for things, di ba? Sobra tayong conscious sa ating sarili. Lalo pag umasenso tayo dahil sa aspiration natin, ginawa natin ng maganda, nakasucceed po. Pagdating ng failure, minsan, doon po tayo nakakatingala sa Diyos. At hawakan naman ng Diyos tayo. Gusto naman ng Diyos gabayan tayo sa ating buhay. Yan po ang panghawakan natin. Manalangin po tayo. Aming Panginoon, salamat sa pag-aaral ng Ego is the Enemy. Napakaraming lessons na aming tinalakay. Napakaraming lakbayin pa kaming dadaanan. At ego pa rin, O Lord God, ang siyang pag-iingatan po namin. Ang aming self na mauna, O Lord God, more than others. O Lord, lalo na mauna kami kaysa sa iyo, Lord. Na, Lord God, na isipin lang po namin ang aming sarili, na hindi na namin iniisip po ang ibang tao. Salamat po, Panginoon, O Lord God, na mga mensaheng aming natalakay ay magiging gabay po sa amin. At ngunit, O Lord God, hindi ho namin magagampanan ito kung wala ka. Kaya muli kami nagpapasakop, muli kami kumikilala, Lord, panghawakan mo lamang po kami. Huwag po kaming, O Lord God, mapalayo sa iyo. Huwag mo pong hayaan ang aming puso, O Lord God, ay, Lord God, lumayo, O Lord God, lumakbay ng hindi ka kasama. Tulungan mo lang po kami. At salamat, Panginoon, lagi mo lang kami ibinabalik sa lakbayin kasama ka. Salamat, Lord, sa buong pag-aaral na to. Nawa na maaalala namin ang mga lessons na to, O Lord God, sa mga panahon ng mga experiences namin sa aming buhay. Lord, muli kami nagpupuri sa iyo sa mangyayari sa linggong ito, sa mga darating na araw sa aming buhay. Lord God, salamat na andyan ka lang po, gagabayan mo po kami. At salamat, Lord God, na nakakapagbigay kami ng aming tithes, ng aming offerings. Lord, bagamat, Lord, may hirap ang buhay. Lord, salamat, Lord, na meron pa rin kaming bahagi sa iyong kaharian, sa iyong mga panawagan, sa iyong palatuntunan. At salamat, O Lord God, na manatili lang kami sa iyo. Manatili kami, O Lord God, Lord God, nagtutulungan, nagsusuportahan sa isa't isa. Salamat po muli, O Lord God. Muli binabalik sa iyo ang papuri, pagdakila at pagsamba sa ngalan lang ni Jesus. Amen at amen. Maraming salamat po at sinamahan nyo kami sa buong pag-aaral ng Ego is the Enemy or Managing Your Ego. At muli po, pwede nyo pong balikan lahat ng ating messages when you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Bread of Life GenSan, or go to our Facebook account, Bread of Life GenSan. So, salamat po sa mga succeeding na aral pa po natin ay inaasahan po namin na makikisama po kayo sa amin. Pagpalain nawa kayo ng Panginoon, gabayan kayo ng Diyos sa inyong mga pamumuhay. God bless po.